might not be the same, but that's not important. No freedom till we're equal. Damn right I support it.
What's up, guys? It's Rose Moulay, and over these past few months, I've noticed a very troubling trend emerging. As you know, we've been seeing the rise of Black Lives Matter and people standing up against police brutality. However, during this time, I've also noticed the resurgence of blackface. Now, as many of you know, blackface was historically used to mock and make fun of black people. However, there's been a very worrying trend of people using blackface to stand for Black Lives Matter. And I'm sure some of you may have seen this video.
This is America. Don't catch you slipping up. Look how I'm living up.
However, most of the people who watch this video probably aren't aware that this isn't just some one-off thing. There is a whole trend of influencers wearing blackface to support Black Lives Matter. And of course, I don't have to tell you that that's disgusting. It only took me a simple Google search to find out that there were many people who were wearing blackface in order to support Black Lives Matter. And these were just the ones I could find. There is a whole group of people on the internet who want to bring back blackface but give it a new woke meaning. However, there is no such thing as woke blackface, and I think that more needs to be done to stop this. I think we're living in a very interesting time where a bunch of people are finally being held accountable for the awful things that they did. Specifically, Shane Dawson. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of people criticize Shane Dawson for the clips he used to make, and in this video, we're going to specifically be focusing on his blackface videos. Now, about 5 years ago, Shane Dawson posted an apology video for his blackface, and it wasn't good. I'm going to play you that video and the clips of blackface that he did. But before we get to that, there's been a lot of people on YouTube sharing their opinions on this whole Shane Dawson thing, and honestly, there are people on both extremes that I just don't agree with. I mean, we have people on YouTube saying that Shane Dawson deserves to go to jail, and we also have people saying that Shane Dawson did nothing wrong. Obviously, I don't agree with either of those statements. It's clear that he made mistakes, but some people have gone a bit too far. Take, for instance, this video.
I'm usually not that girl who's like, oh, let's deplatform people. Saying that cancel culture is super toxic is low-key coded racism.
Saying that cancel culture is toxic is not racism. I think we can all agree that what happened to James Charles was toxic, and that was textbook cancel culture. Obviously, if someone's doing horrible things, they should be held accountable. The problem is that on the internet, we tend to sensationalize things instead of looking at them rationally like we should. I think it's important to call people out, but the problem with cancel culture is that we judge people too quickly and too harshly. This is why people like James Charles get canceled, but months later, as more information comes out, people start to realize that the cancel culture was toxic. All you have to do is look at cases like Pro Jared and Slazo. People sensationalize those stories. It's possible that there was shady behavior in both of those cases, but clearly the amount of sensationalized headlines was vastly disproportional to the actual wrongdoings of those people. So in those cases, cancel culture was toxic. It's not racist to criticize a system that has faults, because we've seen the destructive impact it can have on people who don't deserve it. I just don't understand how you can open up this video by saying that, oh, I'm not the type of person who does this kind of stuff, when you're literally doing it right now. Own up to it. I agree, people shouldn't support Shane Dawson, but don't pretend like this isn't cancel culture. And then there was another part of her video that I just had a huge issue with. She talks about DMing Shane Dawson, how he was nice to her, and basically how she's looking back at her old messages to see if they were manipulative, when she knows full well that he was nothing but nice to her.
Shane, last year, connected in DMs. We've had a few conversations. He was super nice to me. I do look back on those conversations and try to think, were you being manipulated?
It's very clear that Shane Dawson wasn't trying to manipulate her. So why would you even attempt to create this narrative that clearly isn't there? If you want to criticize Shane Dawson for his old videos, do so. But if he's been nothing but nice to you, that's not him being manipulative. Just because Shane Dawson has done some very sketchy things in the past doesn't mean that he was trying to manipulate you in your DMs. I'm not even sure why you'd mention that in this video. It's not a good look admitting that you wanted to create a false narrative. And honestly, hearing you say that, it makes me put into question a lot of the things you say in your video. And then she also says in this video that she doesn't think it matters if Shane Dawson has changed.
I truly believe that Shane thinks that he's changed. But honestly, it does not matter if you think you've changed. Leave YouTube.
Like, I understand that the stuff Shane Dawson has done is horrible, and just because it was done 10 years ago doesn't make it okay. But you have to let people change. You have to let people reform. You have to let people learn from their mistakes. People aren't defined by the worst things that they've ever done. And of course, in no way does that minimize the horrific things that he's done. A million people chose to unsubscribe to Shane Dawson because they saw his old clips and they didn't want to support someone who said those things. I think that's great. The problem I have is you telling Shane Dawson to leave YouTube. When you start trying to take content away from people, that's where I have an issue. She also says in this video that anyone who supported Shane Dawson back in 2009 was a racist.
A lot of the people subscribed to Shane were probably people who thought like him. Racist people. That's the type of audience he spoke to.
And I get calling Shane Dawson a racist, but I don't think that all of Shane Dawson's fans were racists, especially considering the fact that it's been 10 years. I think a lot of the people that watched those clips have matured a lot since then. You know, I'm sure that there were some racist people who watched those videos, but not everyone watching those videos. So yeah, even though I'm against this video wholeheartedly, I also take issue with the people that are just outright defending him. I was watching this video called Stop Cancel Culture, and I agree on the premise, but there were so many issues with this video.
The idea of trying to cancel a big content creator because they were rude to you. Think about how self-centered and rude this is by the person trying to do the allegations. You are going to try and bring down a big influential content creator who might have saved someone from a depressive slump or even worse, suicide. That sounds like a much more wretched agenda than someone being rude to you.
I mean, his argument here literally reminds me of that bike comic meme. The one where this guy is like, oh, well, my bike got stolen recently, but I bet whoever stole it is much happier to have the bike than I'm sad to lose it. The total happiness in the world increased, so it's alright. It's just such a bad argument. Any content creator who has a large audience is going to save some people's lives. Anyone who's an entertainer is going to have that ability. But just because Harvey Weinstein made a few entertaining movies doesn't mean that he shouldn't be rotting in prison. And of course, I don't think Shane Dawson should be in prison, but just because he saved some people from depression doesn't mean that he shouldn't be held accountable. He made mistakes, and it's important that people are calling him out on them.
How many potential PewDiePies or Mr. Beasts down the line are never going to start their channel in the first place because someone who might have inspired them has now been cancelled for pretending to jerk off to someone's sister?
First of all, there's many YouTubers who aren't racist to be inspired by, and I don't think it's a good idea to have people be inspired by racist content. If Shane Dawson's old blackface videos inspired people to do blackface, that is a negative impact on society. Secondly, why are you trying to downplay the severity of that clip? Shane Dawson was pretending to touch himself to an 11-year-old girl.
And Jaden Smith, get the hell over it, dude. One of the unspoken contract rules of having a sister is that your friends will never stop making inappropriate jokes about them.
What? A stranger was making inappropriate sexual jokes about his sister, and you're mad at him for getting upset about that? I'm sorry, but who are you to tell him that he should just get over it?
And the stuff that Shane's done isn't even that bad. It's like all pretty standard stuff that we do in year 8.
Don't normalize this behavior. This isn't okay. It's not normal to make sexual jokes about 11-year-olds, and Shane Dawson is not an 8th grader. He was a full-blown adult when he made that video. He then literally says that because Shane Dawson isn't literally a pedophile, that it's totally fine what he's doing.
Keemstar then goes on to show a tweet from Shane Dawson from 2012, and I guess, yeah, it's pretty bad, but the internet was a totally different place back then. Lion Maker. He's asking 13-year-old girls for naked photos. But compare this to the current video that Shane's trying to get cancelled from, where him and his girlfriend are asking a 12-year-old about sex.
It's obviously worse to actually be a pedophile than to make inappropriate jokes around children. They aren't the same thing. I don't think we should be treating it as if it's the same thing. However, being a step below pedophilia isn't excusable. He still made inappropriate sexual jokes around children. Even if it is a joke, it doesn't matter if you involve actual children. Shane Dawson is not this little girl's mother, and he had no right to be talking about such sexual things to a 12-year-old girl.
It's a little bit of light-hearted comedy, which was acceptable at the time.
No, it wasn't. I'm gonna say something that's absolutely shocking. Most people, even 10 years ago, knew that having sexual conversations with children that weren't yours was a bad thing to do and that you shouldn't do it. But it's okay, right? Because Shane Dawson was just making funny internet videos.
It's easy to frame each situation as asking underage girls inappropriate question, but one of them is clearly worse.
Yes, and we all understand that one is worse than the other. No one's acting like these are the same. Anyone will tell you that one is clearly worse than the other. That's not the issue. The issue is that you're acting like just because there are some people that happen to be worse, that somehow that excuses his behavior, that just because he's not as bad as literal pedophiles, that makes it okay. I don't think someone needs to be a full-blown pedophile to be creepy around kids. As you can see, a lot of people are still defending Shane Dawson, and as I made it clear in the title of this video, I think we need to stop with the excuses. Now, Shane Dawson has done a bunch of horrible things besides blackface, but for the purpose of this video, I'm only going to be talking about his specific blackface videos. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to play you the clips of him wearing blackface, and there's a bunch of them, and then I'm going to play you a bit of his apology video just so you can see what he did and how he responded to it. And I'm going to be analyzing his apology as well as other celebrities who apologized for blackface. I want to compare their apologies, see how they stack up, because most of these apologies are not good, and I get the feeling that they're not really sorry for what they did. So here's Shane Dawson.
Blade Twister, shaking up a family tree. Randy, yo man, we got a hot one right here. I, Liberty Van Fett, am choosing you to be my new object of affection.
How you doing? Welcome to the Wendy Williams Show.
Oh, this is a story all about how my life got twisted upside down. Hey, what's up you guys? Yes, it is me, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Get naked, sing show tunes, and tickle each other's asshole with a feather. I'm a chocolate bunny. Or at least that's what it looks like. I was trying to go for Nicki Minaj. Nigga! Nigga, bitch, monkey woman. Why is Stevie Wonder always smiling? Because he doesn't know he's a nigga. Just because I don't invite the black neighbors over to play in my pool doesn't mean I'm racist. It means I'm careful. First of all, I'm not racist. I'm a nice person.
Shane, you're clearly racist. If you wanted to say that you were racist in the past and that you learned that what you said was wrong and that you plan not to say it again, fine. But stop trying to convince your audience of your innocence. A non-racist person doesn't wear blackface. A non-racist person doesn't say the N-word.
This video is me apologizing because I understand why some people think that.
I love how he frames it as, oh, well, I get why some people think it was racist. It's obviously not racist. I wasn't being racist. Let me make that perfectly clear. But, you know, I get why some people might misconstrue that as racism. No, it's just pure racism. Stop the excuses.
For those of you who don't know what blackface is, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't really know what it was. I knew the term.
That means you knew what it was, Shane. You can't just say, oh, I've never heard of the term blackface, and then say, well, yeah, I knew what the term was, but I didn't really. You knew what it was.
I didn't quite know any of the historical background. I just knew in my head, I was like, that's not what I'm doing. Because what I'm doing is I'm playing Wendy Williams. So for me, in my head, I was just like, oh no, I'm just becoming the character. I'm not making fun of them for being black. I'm just looking like that.
Sure, Jan.
So I knew that blackface was white people impersonating black people, but I was a white person who impersonated a black person, and I didn't think that was blackface. So this is something I wanted to address because Shane Dawson makes it very clear in this video that he wasn't trying to make fun of them for their black skin. He just wanted to play the character, and that he put on the blackface specifically because the person was black, and he wanted to put on that blackface to look more like them. Essentially, his argument here is that because I wasn't mocking them, which he was in these clips, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that, you know, he wasn't making fun of them. I want to raise the question to you. What about blackface makes it offensive? What about blackface makes it racist? Is it the fact that you are a white person wearing a blackface? Or is it about the intent of the blackface? For instance, if you wear blackface in a way that isn't intended to mock black people, does that excuse you from blackface? Is the thing about blackface that makes it so offensive the offensive jokes, the way that it mocks black people, or the simple fact that a white person is performing an identity that isn't theirs? Now, I actually tend to believe it's the latter, because if the former was true and the only issue with blackface was the offensive jokes and the way that it mocks black people, then there wouldn't have been such an outrage when these influencers wore blackface, even though they were clearly wearing it to support Black Lives Matter. Because here's the thing about blackface, it doesn't matter what your intent is. It doesn't matter if you think you have good intentions. It doesn't matter if you don't think you're mocking black people by wearing blackface. It's not for you to wear. As a white person, you can't put on blackface and even as a performance play the role of someone with systemized oppression that you don't have. The simple act of putting on a blackface is offensive simply because of the impression that black people have faced and the history of blackface being used for those purposes. When black people say the N-word, it is no longer used in a racial way. However, even if a white person were to say the N-word in this new reformed way, black people still take issue with it because of its history. So as some people would argue, well, a white person can say the N-word with an A at the end because that word is not racially motivated, motivated, it's still not okay for a white person to say that word. The same holds true for blackface. It doesn't matter if you think you have the best intentions. There is no circumstance where a white person can wear blackface and that would be okay. Yet for whatever reason, a lot of influencers seem to have this idea that blackface is just another form of comedy, that blackface is simply just another way of expressing a character. After all, Shane Dawson isn't just playing the characters of black people, he puts on characters for everyone, so why can't he put on a black face to symbolize that he's playing a black character? It's not racially motivated when I do it, I'm just making a joke. But that's the issue. If you look at the origins of blackface, at those minstrel shows, they were also jokes.
Well, why don't you get a job and go to work? You almost had me a job this morning.
How you doing? Welcome to the Wendy Williams Show.
I went down to the post office and asked that man, could he let me have one of them jobs as a letter toter?
Get naked, sing show tunes, and tickle each other's asshole with a feather.
And the man said before he could give me a situation, he'd have to put me through a simple self-examination.
I, Liberty Van Fett, am choosing you to be my new object of affection.
And sure, what Shane Dawson did wasn't as bad as blackface in the 1920s, but it's not that much better. I think the moral of the story is that Shane just needs to realize that black people are not characters for him to play. But anyway, Shane Dawson yet again insists that he isn't a racist. Ignore the times where he dressed up in blackface said the N-word. His friends know he's not a racist, so he clearly isn't.
I think there's a lot of people who know I'm not a racist person, but that I was just ignorant.
Those two do not contradict each other. Your ignorance can be the cause of your racism, but just because you're ignorant doesn't mean that you weren't also being racist. Those clips were very racially motivated. Anyway, there's another part of this video where Shane Dawson talks about his movie and all the criticism he got for it because of how offensive it was. And listen to the way he responds to it.
The movie is not offensive, but this reviewer tore me apart and basically called me horrible things, including racist, because of my YouTube stuff, not because of the movie. There's no racism in the movie. There's a black hobo eating his own shit. I didn't ask for a black hobo. Funniest one was this black guy named Garvey, who's fucking hilarious, so I picked him.
Well, let me ask you, Shane, why did you think that the funniest guy for the hobo scene happened to be a black man? Do you think that just maybe there was a bit of unconscious bias there, that for whatever reason you saw a black man as a hobo being more funny than a white man as a hobo? Shane Dawson doesn't even bother to question his unconscious biases, but it's very clear to me that that seemed to be a very racially motivated choice. I don't think it's just a coincidence, and your YouTube videos prove that you have this pattern of behavior of racism towards black people. I think that reviewer was 100% correct in his assertion about you.
Because of my videos, now every choice I make, people are going to jump right to racist.
Shane, even if you didn't make those videos, it would still be racist. People who saw that scene and didn't know that you were a YouTuber still thought it was offensive. That has nothing to do with your YouTube career. It just happens to be the fact that, well, you have a pattern of racism, and in this particular movie, it showed.
I just want to make funny shit, and the movie's funny. But now a lot of people aren't going to give it a chance because they think it's going to be horrible and offensive, and it's really not.
Sure, Jan.
The script is not that raunchy. Somebody out there is a rat and they're going around saying this is the raunchiest movie ever made, and have New York Times say, if you like Shane's movie, then you must be a rapist, a racist, a homophobe, or a pedophile.
But anyway, that's the end of his apology, and quite honestly, this was a horrible apology, and I'm not sure why his fans accepted it at the time. But after seeing his apology, I really wanted to compare Shane Dawson's apology to the other apologies of people who've been called out for blackface, because as you know, Jimmy Kimmel and Justin Trudeau have also been exposed for wearing blackface. I guess I just wanted to analyze what they said and how they tried to escape this situation with their careers. There's no case where it's ever justified to wear blackface. That's just something you should never do under any circumstance. But let's say someone did blackface. What's the best way to respond to that? And did any of these people respond in a way that they understand the implications of their racist past and learn from it to become better people in the future and to be more sympathetic to the black community struggles? Did they do that? Well, let's look at what Jimmy Kimmel said.
Kimmel says at the time, he didn't see it as blackface, but the imitation of a human being.
So Jimmy Kimmel basically has the exact same excuse that Shane Dawson does. Your excuse is literally just explaining what blackface is and framing it as, oh, it's just an imitation. You're essentially just trying to water down blackface to make it seem like it's not as bad as it actually is. But there's something else that Jimmy Kimmel said that really frustrated me.
Jimmy said yesterday,
Looking back, many of these sketches are embarrassing, and it is frustrating that these thoughtless moments have become a weapon used by some to diminish my criticisms of social and other injustices. I know that this will be used again to try to quiet me. I won't be bullied into silence by those who feign outrage to advance their oppressive and genuinely racist agendas.
Not everyone who's offended by your blackface is on the right. Surprise! There are people on the left who are offended by your blackface too. Specifically, black people. I know this might come as a shock to Jimmy Kimmel himself, but you can't simply deflect from your wrongdoings and say, this is simply a political tactic being used to end me, to cancel me. All you're trying to do is you're trying to turn the discussion away from you. That is a form of deflection. Even if they decided to replace Jimmy Kimmel with some other late night comedian who didn't happen to wear blackface, I don't think the world would be any worse of a place. I don't think that what he's doing is so important that he's above criticism. What bothers me the most about Jimmy Kimmel's response is that he doesn't actually address blackface. I don't really feel like he's learned much from the experience. And quite honestly, I get the impression that the only thing that matters to Jimmy Kimmel is that people stop criticizing Jimmy Kimmel. And I think it's absurd to claim that anyone who might be offended by your blackface sketch is simply just a member of the alt-right and happens to be racist themselves. And the thing is that Jimmy Kimmel isn't even a politician. He's just a late night comedian at the end of the day. But here's the thing, right? I'm sure if a major politician happened to be accused of blackface, that they would just say the same thing. So this was just a political tactic by their opponent to try to silence them.
Dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on. I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better, but I didn't, and I'm really sorry.
How do you feel about this coming out right now in the campaign?
Obviously, I regret that I did it. It's not about timing, it's about having done something that I shouldn't have done, and I'm really sorry I did.
Notice how Justin Trudeau realizes what's more important here. He could easily say that this is just a political tactic by the opponents to try to discredit him, but instead he says, this might be a political tactic, but that still doesn't excuse what I did. Regardless of the outside circumstances, this is still disgusting and I feel like it's important for me to apologize. And I respect that a lot. I think that's the best way you can respond in a situation like this. And I want to be clear that of course it doesn't excuse his horrific actions, but when I look at this response by Justin Trudeau, he's the only one of these three people that actually seems to have learned from this experience. No justification, no I'm not a racist. Then a reporter asked if this one specific case was the only time he's ever worn blackface. And Justin Trudeau has every incentive to lie, but he doesn't.
Is that the only time in your life you've ever done something like that?
When I was in high school, I dressed up at a talent show and sang Deo with makeup on.
It's this kind of honesty that's refreshing to see. Then a reporter asks him if this photo is racist, and watch how Trudeau responds.
Was this photo racist in your opinion?
Yes. I didn't consider it a racist action at the time, but now we know better, and this was something that was unacceptable, and yes, racist.
Unlike Shane Dawson, he admits that what he did was racist, and he seems to show genuine growth from the situation. Does that excuse his behavior? Of course not. What he did was disgusting. As a white person myself, I have no right to accept his apology, and I have no right to accept the apology of Shane Dawson or Jimmy Kimmel either. I just think that of these three examples, this is someone who's shown the most personal accountability. In practically almost every apology you'll see of blackface, they'll always try to find some justification as to why they're actually not racist for wearing blackface. As I stated at the beginning of this video, we're living in a time where people are being held accountable for their racist actions. It's not good enough anymore to just say sorry. It's not good enough anymore to leave a half-hearted apology as an attempt to keep your career. What's important is that people understand why blackface is so offensive and why it's never acceptable. And that's the same reason why we need to vehemently denounce anyone who tries to bring back blackface or anyone who tries to give any excuse for it. We need to make it perfectly clear that this is never acceptable and that there are no situations where a white person can put on a black face. So that's essentially all I want to say on the subject. I do have part 2 planned, and part 2 will be about specifically how drag differs from blackface and the similarities between them. I want to make a whole video specifically referring to the misogyny within drag culture and how no one talks about it. But before I end this video, there is something really quickly that I do want to address. There's this video that went viral on TikTok surrounding Black Lives Matter that a lot of people seem to be really outraged over. Now, the person in this video is actually someone who is subscribed to my channel. This person has supported my music for a while, and this person is someone who's supported me. That being said, I want to make it perfectly clear that I do not condone what she's saying in this video.
Does it look like I give a fuck about this? You know what's more important? Veganism. Animals have their throats crushed every single day, and no one's talking about that. That's more important.
Yes, animals are being mistreated, but the mistreatment of human beings is a far bigger issue. Human lives are more important than animal lives. And for you to even compare black people to animals is a racist trope in itself. Now here's the thing, I know her, she claims that this was just a joke. Some of you may not believe that, and I understand, but from what she's told me, she is a Black Lives Matter supporter. But the fact is this, to me it's very clear this video was purely made in order to outrage people, but that doesn't excuse the racism exhibited in this video. So as much as it hurts me to say this because I know that you've supported me in the past and you've been overall pretty nice to me, I really hope that you've learned your lesson from making this video. That being said, I just want to ask anyone who's watching this video, please don't harass her. She's obviously mentally ill and she's going through a lot. It doesn't excuse what she's doing, but I don't think that harassing people is the right way to go about this. I really don't think trying to get her in trouble with her school or trying to get her fired from future jobs is going to help the situation. I just wanted to set the record straight when it comes to that. And that concludes this video. I just want to thank you all so much for 500 subscribers, and I wanted to do something extra special for my 500 subscribers special. So I decided to make this into a 2-part series. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in part 2, which comes out in just a few days. See you. Bye.
Warning, very sad. Why don't I have 1 million subs yet? This isn't fair, give me subs. If you wanted sandwiches you could have just asked. Or you could subscribe to Rose Moulet's channel. I think I'll take the sandwiches.